Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Super English Talks. I'm your host, Jara, and I'm really happy that you are here with me today. Over the years, I have worked with many students from all over the world. And do you know what I've learned? The biggest problem in learning English is not what most people think. It's not grammar. It's not vocabulary. It's not even a strong or difficult accent. The biggest problem for many learners is fear. Fear of opening your mouth and saying something wrong. Fear of not understanding when someone speaks too quickly. Fear that all your hard work will disappear in one scary conversation. If you have ever felt this way, please remember something very important. You are not alone. Many learners, maybe even most learners, feel the same way at some point. And it's completely normal. But here's the good news. Today, we're going to talk about how to move past that fear. We're going to talk about how to find the English that is already inside you and bring it out with confidence. The topic of today's episode is Speak Smart, Learn Fast. Now, what does that mean? It doesn't mean you need to be perfect. It doesn't mean you need to know every single word in English. What it really means is this. You can be smart with the English you already know, and you can use every conversation as a chance to grow, to improve, and to learn faster. To show you how this works, I want to tell you a story. This is not just a quick example. It's going to be a long journey that we'll take together, step by step. Through this story, you will see how fear can block us, but also how we can overcome it with the right tools and mindset. The story is about one of my students, a good friend of mine named Alex. Alex is one of the most dedicated learners I have ever met. He's also a very smart person. He works as a computer programmer, and his brain works like a steel trap, very sharp and very strong. He could read complicated technical manuals in English without any problem. He could write long and detailed emails. He could even explain difficult technical ideas through writing. But here was the problem. When Alex entered a room full of people talking, his brain would suddenly stop. He said it felt like his computer had frozen. All the words were inside his head, but the speak button just would not work.
Why?
Because of fear. The fear of making a mistake. The fear of a long, awkward silence. The fear of being judged. This fear was like an invisible wall, stopping him from using the English he already knew. By the end of today's conversation, you will not only understand why this happens, but you will also learn a full set of tools, tips, and practice exercises woven into Alex's story so that you can start speaking smart and learning fast yourself. Let me take you to the moment when Alex first came to me for help. He looked very tired, almost defeated. He had just come back from a big work conference, and he told me he had felt almost invisible there. He described the scene like this: a large room full of people, small groups of colleagues chatting and laughing together. Conversations flowing quickly from one person to another. He told me, Jara, I know all the right words. I can write a detailed report about my work. I can explain my project to my team in writing. But at that conference, I couldn't join the conversations. People were talking about football games, about their weekend plans, about movies they had watched. The conversations were so fast, so casual, so full of slang. And they kept jumping from one topic to another without stopping. I just couldn't keep up. I felt like I had nothing to say. And then he told me about one moment in particular, a moment that really hurt. Alex told me about one moment at the conference that really stayed in his mind. He was standing with two colleagues, one from England and one from Canada. They were laughing together, talking about a popular TV show. Now here's the interesting part. Alex actually knew that show. He had even watched a few episodes. But in that moment, he didn't say a single word. He just stood there, smiling and nodding, pretending to follow along. Inside, he felt invisible, almost like a ghost in the room. He told me that in that moment, he felt a deep sense of shame. He felt lonely, like an outsider who was stuck outside a warm and friendly club. A club he really wanted to join, but didn't know how to enter. And this, my friends, is the true power of small talk. Small talk is not really about small things. It's not about TV shows, sports, or the weather. The real purpose of small talk is connection. It's about showing that you're present, showing interest in others, and warming up your speaking muscles. Small talk is not a test. It's just a doorway into real conversation. For Alex, small talk was the scariest part of English. And it wasn't because his English was bad. In fact, his English was excellent. His problem was his approach. He was treating small talk like a serious exam. But in reality, small talk is more like a friendly game of catch. Think about it. In a game of catch, the goal isn't to throw the ball as hard as you can. The goal is just to keep the ball in the air, passing it back and forth. That's exactly how small talk works. You don't need a perfect answer or a brilliant joke. You just need to keep the conversation alive. So, I gave Alex a new way to think about it. I told him, you don't have to be the one who tells the funniest story or makes the biggest joke. All you need to do is learn how to throw the ball back. And the best way to do that is by asking questions. This became the very first tool in what I call the Speak Smart, Learn Fast toolbox. Asking questions is powerful for 3 reasons. It takes the pressure off you and puts it on the other person. It shows you're interested in what they're saying. It keeps the conversation going, even if you don't know what to say next. I gave Alex a list of very simple questions he could use anytime. Questions like, how was your weekend? What are you working on today? Have you ever been here before? These are not difficult questions. They don't need advanced grammar. They don't need a perfect accent. They just open the door. I explained to him, the goal of a question is not to sound brilliant. The goal is simply to be part of the exchange. We met at a quiet coffee shop to practice. I pretended to be a colleague during a coffee break, and Alex practiced asking his questions. He started with, how was your weekend? His voice was flat and nervous, but he asked it. That was a good start. I answered, it was great. I went to a concert. And then Alex froze. He just looked at me, silent, with wide eyes. His brain was empty. He had prepared so carefully for the first question that he had no idea what to do with the answer. That same wave of panic he felt at the conference rushed back into his face. So, I showed him a simple trick, the follow-up question. For example, oh, a concert. What kind of music was it? Who did you go with? Where was the concert held? These questions don't need to be long or complicated. They are just little steps that keep the conversation alive. I told him, conversations are like tennis. The ball goes back and forth. You don't need a powerful shot every time. Sometimes just a soft return is enough. The person who serves the ball isn't the most important. It's the person who can keep returning it who makes the game last. And slowly, Alex began to understand. This was a huge turning point for Alex. For the first time, he realized something very important. He didn't need to be a star player in the conversation. He didn't need to say something amazing or perfect every time. He just needed to be a part of the game. He finally understood that speaking English is not about perfection, it's about participation. He didn't have to shine like the brightest star in the room. He simply had to show up and stay in the conversation. So we practiced, again and again. I would give him a simple topic, and he would practice asking not just one question, but a whole chain of 3 questions. The first time we tried it, Alex was very slow and unsure. He asked his questions nervously, with long pauses in between. The second time, he was a little faster. By the 10th time, he started to sound more natural. His questions came with a bit more rhythm and flow. It wasn't magic, it was training. Just like you train a muscle in the gym, he was training his brain to move from one question to the next without freezing. Step by step, he was transforming himself from a quiet observer into an active conversational partner. Now, I want you to try the same exercise. We'll call it the question chain. Here's how it works. Pick a simple topic. For example, favorite food. Write down 3 easy questions you could ask someone about that topic. Let's try together. Question 1. What is your favorite food? Question 2. Oh, that sounds interesting. What does it taste like? Question 3. Where did you try it for the first time? That's it. Just 3 simple questions. Why is this powerful? Because you are training your brain to always have something ready to say. Instead of panicking and going blank, you'll have an automatic response prepared. That way, the fear of silence will not control you. And remember, this exercise is not about memorizing sentences like an actor in a play. It's about training your brain to think in a new way, to see every answer as a door to another question, to keep the conversation alive instead of letting it die after one line. This small but powerful change completely transformed Alex's mindset. He went from feeling like he had nothing to say to realizing that he had a very useful tool in his hand. Was he still nervous? Yes, a little. But the fear was no longer paralyzing. It no longer froze him in silence. He was no longer just a passive listener, waiting for the conversation to end. He had become an active participant, always ready to throw the ball back and keep the game going. Even more than that, Alex began to see every person as a new story waiting to be told. And with his simple questions, he became the person who was ready to listen. It was a beautiful shift, a small change with a very big impact. But of course, this was only the beginning of his journey to speak smart and learn fast. After using this tool for a week, Alex came back to me with a new problem. He sat down, looked a little worried, and confessed, "Jara, the questions are helping me. They really are. But I still feel nervous. Every time I open my mouth, I hear my own accent. I'm afraid that people will hear my accent and think my English is bad. I'm afraid that I'll use the wrong tense or the wrong word. Sometimes I prepare a question, but before I say it, 100 thoughts rush into my mind. Is my pronunciation correct? What if I say a plural wrong? What if they don't understand me?" These thoughts get so loud that I freeze up again. And this, my friends, is the second big barrier to speaking smart, the need for perfection. So many learners believe they can only speak if every single sentence is perfect. No mistakes in grammar. No mistakes in pronunciation. No sign of an accent. But this is impossible. It's like a chef who refuses to cook until he has every single ingredient in the world. That chef will never cook. The truth is, you have to cook with the ingredients you already have. And in the same way, you have to speak with the English you already know. You must learn to be okay with a few mistakes. This is the difference between speaking with confidence and speaking with perfection. Speaking with perfection means waiting until you are 100% correct before saying anything. Speaking with confidence means you are willing to make small mistakes because the most important thing is getting your message across. The message is always more important than the delivery. To help Alex understand this, I told him a story about another student of mine, a wonderful woman from Brazil named Maria. Maria had a very different approach to English, and she had something Alex could learn from. Maria was one of the most creative people I had ever met. She was a brilliant graphic designer. Her ideas were fresh, colorful, and full of life. In her own language, Portuguese, she was funny, talkative, and confident. But in English, she was different. She was quiet. Too quiet. Not because she didn't have ideas, she had plenty, but because she was afraid of making mistakes. And that fear kept her silent. I remember one meeting very clearly. Maria's team was brainstorming ideas for a new marketing campaign. Everyone was throwing ideas on the table, fast, energetic, overlapping each other. I could see Maria sitting there, excited. She had a brilliant idea, and it was obvious she wanted to share it. She leaned forward, opened her mouth, and then stopped. She waited for a pause in the conversation, but the pause never came. Her chance to speak disappeared, and with it, her brilliant idea was lost. After the meeting, Maria was upset. She came to me and said, "Jara, I had an amazing idea. I know they would have loved it. I wanted to say, I have a new idea for the campaign. But then I thought, what if I said I have a new idea to the campaign or something wrong like that? So I stayed silent. And now my idea is gone forever." A few minutes later, her boss walked up to her and said, "Maria, you are so quiet. We need to hear your ideas. Your perspective is so important to us." But instead of feeling encouraged, Maria felt terrible. She felt like her silence had exposed her weakness. She thought, they can all see I'm failing. I told Maria something very important. And later, I shared the same lesson with Alex. I said, "Your boss didn't care about perfect grammar. Your boss wanted to hear your ideas. The message is more important than the words. Always." I also told them, "Your accent is not a problem. It's part of who you are. It's a symbol of your journey, of your hard work. You should be proud of it." Native speakers all have accents too, and no one says their accent is a problem. So why should yours be? The only people who judge a learner's accent are people who have never had the courage to learn a second language themselves. And then I said something I really wanted them to remember. The most beautiful thing in a conversation is not perfect grammar. It's the courage to speak. It's the courage to share your thoughts, your ideas, your questions, your stories. Every mistake you make is not a failure. It's proof that you are trying, that you are learning, that you are alive in the language. So the big question was, how can we practice speaking with confidence, not perfection? How can we stop seeing mistakes as reasons to hide and start seeing them as opportunities to grow? I taught them a simple but powerful exercise. I call it the mistake log. This exercise changes the way you see mistakes. Instead of treating them like failures, you turn them into learning treasures. Here's how it works. For the next few days, make a conscious effort to speak in English. You can speak to a friend, to a language partner, or even just practice out loud to yourself in the mirror. Whenever you make a mistake, maybe you use the wrong tense or mispronounce a word, don't get upset. Don't feel ashamed. Instead, pause for a moment and write it down in a small notebook. That notebook becomes your mistake log. Here's exactly how the mistake log works. Take a notebook. On the left side of the page, write down the mistake you made. For example, maybe you said, "I have a questioning." On the right side of the page, write the correct version. "I have a question." If you want, you can even add a small reminder note to yourself. For this example, you might write, "Remember, Question is a noun, not a verb. That's it. Simple, but powerful. Why does this work? Because you're not just fixing a mistake. You're changing the way your brain reacts to mistakes. You're no longer seeing mistakes as something shameful. You're seeing them as useful information, as data that will help you grow. Instead of a negative feeling, you're creating a positive action. Instead of thinking, "Oh no, I failed," you start thinking, "Great, I just learned something new." This mental shift is small, but it's incredibly powerful. Over time, it will take away the fear of speaking. You'll start to feel more confident, more in control of your learning, and more courageous when you open your mouth to speak. I remember when Alex started doing this. He brought me his notebook after 1 week. It was already filled with pages of mistakes. Some were very small, like writing "I goed" instead of "I went." Others were bigger, like using the wrong preposition in a sentence. But Alex wasn't embarrassed about this notebook. He was proud of it. He said, "Jara, every mistake I write down is one I probably won't make again. This notebook isn't a list of my failures. It's a map of my progress." That was a huge change in his mindset. He was no longer scared of mistakes because he had a plan. He had a way to turn every error into a stepping stone toward improvement. And this, my friends, is one of the most important parts of speaking smart. The path to fluency is never a straight, perfect road. It's a winding path, full of bumps, wrong turns, and surprises. The goal is not to avoid the bumps, it's to learn how to drive over them with confidence. But of course, as Alex's confidence grew, a new problem appeared. He came to me one afternoon with a frustrated look on his face. He said, "Jara, I'm not so afraid anymore. I can ask questions. I can join the conversation. But when it's my turn to speak, I feel so slow. My brain is still thinking in my native language. First, I imagine the sentence in my language. Then I translate it into English. Then I look for the right words. Then I try to put them in the right order. By the time I'm ready, the conversation has already moved on. I feel like my brain is a computer running 100 programs at the same time, and it just can't keep up." And I told him, "Alex, this is completely normal. Almost every learner at the B1 or B2 level feels this way. You have enough vocabulary. You have enough grammar. The problem is not knowledge. The problem is speed. Building every sentence from scratch in real time is just too slow." So what do? This is where I told Alex we needed to get a little sneaky. We needed to learn how to become a language thief. Now, don't worry, I don't mean thief in a bad way. I mean it in the best way possible. To speak smart, you must become a language detective. You must always listen, not just for single words, but for patterns, expressions, and ready-made phrases. These are little treasures of language that you can steal and reuse in your own conversations. Because here's the secret. Fluency is not about creating every single sentence from zero. Fluency is about collecting ready-made building blocks and using them when you need them. You don't have to be a perfect artist who creates every sentence from nothing. You just have to be a smart thief, someone who notices the best parts of the language around you and reuses them. I explained this to Alex with a story from my own life. One afternoon, I was working in a coffee shop. At the table next to me, 2 women were talking about a new movie they had just seen. I wasn't really listening at first, but then I heard something interesting. One of them said, "I saw that new movie and I'm not a huge fan of it, to be honest." Her friend replied, "Oh, really? I actually really liked it. I thought the acting was pretty good." I smiled to myself because, in just those few lines, I heard 3 ready-made phrases you can use in almost any conversation. I'm not a huge fan of. I actually really liked it. It was pretty good. And here's the magic. You don't have to only use these phrases for movies. You can use them for anything: books, restaurants, songs, apps, or even projects at work. I'm not a huge fan of spicy food. I actually really liked the new app we tried today. The presentation was pretty good. You don't need to invent a brand new sentence every time. The language is already around you, just waiting to be borrowed. When I explained this to Alex, it was a huge aha moment. He realized he didn't need to build everything from scratch like an artist painting on a blank canvas. He just had to be a language thief, listening carefully and collecting treasures that were already there. And this is actually very smart. It reduces the mental pressure on your brain. Instead of thinking about grammar, vocabulary, and structure all at once, you're simply borrowing a ready-made template and plugging in your own words. Think of it like building a website. You don't design every button, every menu, and every page from zero. You start with a template and then add your own content. That's exactly how this method works. By doing this, you are also training your brain to think in English, not translate from your native language. You're learning the natural rhythm and flow of real conversations, not just single words. I remember when Alex started practicing this. He carried a small notebook with him everywhere, a little journal he called his language thief log. One day in a team meeting, his manager said, "We are all looking forward to this project, and we are going to get it done by the end of the month." Alex quickly wrote down 2 useful phrases. Looking forward to. By the end of the month. He didn't try to copy the whole sentence. He didn't worry about understanding every detail. He just focused on stealing those 2 phrases. Later that same day, he tried one of them in a casual conversation with a colleague. He said, "I'm looking forward to the weekend." And here's the best part. His colleague didn't notice anything unusual. They didn't think, "Oh, Alex is practicing English." They just thought, "That sounds completely natural." It was a huge success, and Alex felt proud and confident. Now, let's talk about how you can do this. Here's your exercise. We'll call it the language thief method. The next time you listen to a podcast, watch a TV show, or even overhear a conversation, keep a notebook or your phone ready. Your only goal is to catch one useful phrase. Just one. Write it down in your notebook. Then, later in the day, try to use it in your own sentence. For example, if you hear, "I'm looking forward to the weekend," write it down. Then try saying, "I'm looking forward to meeting my friend tomorrow," or "I'm looking forward to trying that new restaurant." Every time you do this, you're not just learning a phrase, you're training your brain to speak faster, more naturally, and with more confidence. You can say, "I'm looking forward to my vacation," or "I'm looking forward to seeing my friends." When you do this, you're not just learning new words, you're learning patterns of speech. This is how you begin to speak smart and learn fast. By reusing the language you hear, you are turning a passive listening experience into an active learning one. Instead of just letting words wash over you, you are collecting them and using them. This will not only help you speak more fluently, but it will also help you listen more effectively. Your brain will start to hear phrases, patterns, and rhythms, not just individual words. And when you hear the rhythm of English, it becomes much easier to follow conversations and respond quickly. This is the power of being a smart thief. It's not about being the best artist who creates everything from scratch. It's about being the clever one who knows how to use what's already around them. As Alex's confidence grew, a new challenge appeared. He said to me, "Jara, I have all of these phrases in my notebook. I can say things like, 'I'm looking forward to the weekend,' and that feels great.
But what if I want to say more than that?
What if I want to tell a story about my weekend? My brain feels so slow. I'll say one sentence, and then there's a long pause while I try to think of the next one. My sentences feel like disconnected islands. I can't find the bridges to connect them. This is a very common frustration for B1 and B2 learners. You know the words. You know some good phrases. But when it comes to building a longer, flowing thought, your brain is overwhelmed.
Why?
Because it's trying to do too many things at the same time. It's trying to think of the story you want to tell, translate or find the English words, put them in the right order, and do it all in real time. No wonder it feels slow and stressful. That's why I taught Alex a powerful new tool, a tool that acts like a bridge between your ideas. I call it the scaffolding technique. Think about how buildings are made. When you see a tall building under construction, you always see scaffolding around it. The scaffolding isn't the final building. It's not the glass windows or the finished walls, but it's what allows the workers to build safely and steadily. In English language are simple sentence starters or connecting phrases that help you build a longer thought. Instead of trying to create a complicated sentence from scratch, you can use a scaffold to get started. It gives you time, it gives you structure, and it makes your speech sound more natural while your brain catches up. I remember when Alex and I practiced this together. He wanted to tell me a story about his weekend. Without scaffolding, it sounded like this.
I
went to the park and I saw a dog. His story came out as short, disconnected facts. It was slow and hard to follow. I told him, Alex, your brain is doing too much at once. Let's make it easier. Let's use a scaffold. I gave Alex a very simple scaffold to help him start his stories. The most interesting thing that happened was we practiced with his park story. Instead of starting with a long pause and a nervous I went to the park, he began with the scaffold. The most interesting thing that happened was I went to the park and I saw a dog. Now, was the sentence perfect? Not really.
It was still a little choppy.
But it was 1,000 times better. The scaffold gave him a clear starting point. It gave his brain just enough time to find the next words. Most importantly, the conversation was moving forward. That's the real power of the language. They are small, but they are mighty. They act as bridges between your thoughts. And there are so many easy scaffolds you can use. For example, to give your opinion, I think that / in my opinion / from my point of view. To talk about the future, I'm planning to / my goal is to / I hope to tell a story. The most interesting thing that happened was / one funny thing that happened was / what surprised me was. These little phrases are like guardrails on a road. They don't tell you exactly where to go, but they keep you moving safely and confidently. They give you the courage to start speaking even when you don't know exactly how the sentence will end. I remember another time when Alex was in a work meeting. A colleague had just finished explaining a new software feature. Alex had an idea he wanted to share, but he froze. That old anxiety was rushing back. In the past, he would have stayed silent, but this time, he remembered the language-making technique. He took a deep breath and began with, from my point of view, we could try to solve this problem by adding a new button to the user interface. This sentence wasn't perfect, but it was clear. It was confident, and it was 1,000 times better than silence. His brain no longer had to build the whole sentence from nothing. The T language carried the weight, and he just had to fill in the details. The conversation continued, and his idea was heard. That's the magic of language creation. It's not about perfect grammar. It's about making your brain work for you instead of against you. Now, I want you to try this for yourself. We'll call it the language challenge. Pick a simple topic. Let's say your favorite movie. Try to talk about it for just 1 minute. Use at least 3 different the language. For example, I think the main character was very brave. From my point of view, the ending was a little sad. I'm planning to watch it again with my friends. Do you see how those little bridges make it easier to keep going? This is how you train your brain to use the language naturally. Over time, your speech will become smoother, more confident, and less choppy. And here's the bonus. When you use the language, not only does your speaking improve, your listening improves too. You'll start to notice these phrases in real conversations, TV shows, and podcasts. And once you notice them, you can steal them, practice them, and make them your own. This is how you speak smart and learn fast, by building bridges between your thoughts and creating a conversation that flows. When you start listening carefully to other people's speech, you will notice that they also use scaffolds. These little phrases are like road signs. They help you follow their ideas. For example, when someone says, "In my opinion," you know that they are about to share their thoughts. When someone says, "The most important thing is," you know that something important is coming. When you notice these signals, you can follow the conversation more easily. You can even guess what the person might say next. This makes it easier for you to respond quickly. This is the secret of being a smart speaker. It is not about speaking the fastest. It is about being prepared and using simple tools. Now, Alex had been practicing the language for a while. He was getting better and better. His sentences were smoother. He was more confident. But soon, a new challenge appeared. One day Alex said to me, "Jara, I can ask questions now. I can use the language to give my opinion. But when I try to tell a story about my life, it feels boring. I tell people what I did over the weekend, and they just say, 'Oh,' and then the conversation ends. It feels like my stories don't connect with people." This is a very common problem for English learners at the B1 and B2 levels. At this stage, you usually have enough words to describe the facts. You can say what happened, but you don't yet know how to make people feel what you felt. Here is the problem. Facts alone are not enough. A conversation without emotion is like food without flavor. You can eat it, but it doesn't taste good. This is where we need a new skill, the power of storytelling. Storytelling is one of the most important parts of human communication. It is also one of the best ways to practice your English. A good story is not about big words or perfect grammar. A good story is about feelings, simple details, and a clear structure with a beginning, middle, and end. When you tell a story, your goal is not to be a perfect narrator. Your goal is to be a human being sharing a human experience. You want your listener to feel like they were there with you.
Let me give you an example.
Alex once tried to tell me a story about a bad day at work, but the way he told it sounded like a shopping list. He said, "My boss was mad. The computer didn't work. I had to stay late. It was bad." Yes, those were the facts, but it was hard to feel anything. It was just a list of ingredients, not a real meal. So I said to Alex, "That's a good start. But right now, your story is only the ingredients. Let's cook the meal together. Let's add some emotion, some description, and some feeling." The most important part of a story is not the facts. It is the feeling. So I asked him, "How did you feel when your boss was mad?" He thought for a moment and said, "I felt a little bit scared and very stressed." I said, "Perfect. Let's add that to the story." Then I asked, "How did you feel when the computer didn't work?" He said, "I felt so frustrated and helpless." I said, "Yes, that's exactly what we need. Let's add that too." Now, let's look at how his story changed. At first, he said, "My boss was mad. The computer didn't work. I had to stay late. It was bad." But after we added feelings, he said, "My boss was so angry today. I felt a little bit scared and very stressed. Then my computer just stopped working. I felt so frustrated and helpless. And after all of that, I had to stay late at the office. It was such a bad day." Do you see the difference? The facts are almost the same, but now the story has flavor. It is no longer just information. It is an experience. When Alex told the story this way, I could feel his stress. I could imagine being in his place. And that is what makes a story powerful. Alex had to stay very late at work one night. When he first told me the story, it was just a list of facts. But then he added emotion and feeling. And suddenly, the story felt completely different. It was no longer just, "I stayed late. I was tired. It was bad." Now it became, "I had to stay at work very late. I felt so stressed and exhausted. My head was heavy, and I just wanted to go home." Do you see the difference? The facts were the same, but now the story was a human experience. I could feel what Alex felt. I could almost feel his stress, his frustration, and his tiredness in my own body. And something amazing happened. The conversation didn't stop with a simple, "Oh." Instead, it continued. We started to talk about how Alex dealt with his stress. We talked about what happened with his boss. His story created a bridge between us. It made a real connection. This is the smart way to learn and speak. Because when you focus on emotion, you are not only practicing English grammar or vocabulary. You are practicing purpose. You are thinking about what your words do, not just whether your words are correct. When you speak with emotion, you are asking yourself, how does my listener feel when they hear me? Am I only giving them information? Or am I helping them connect with me as a person? By focusing on emotion, you also start to use very simple but powerful words. Words like happy, sad, scared, excited, frustrated, amazed. These are not advanced words, but they are emotional words. And emotional words are incredibly strong. They make your English come alive. I remember another time when Alex told me about going to the beach for the first time. His first version of the story was, "I went to the beach. I saw the ocean. The sun was hot. I went in the water." Yes, those were the facts. But it didn't make me feel anything. So I asked him, "Alex, let's make this a real story. How did you feel when you saw the ocean for the first time? Was the water cold or warm? Was the sun just hot, or was it something more?" He thought about it. Then he said, "The sun was so warm on my skin. The water was a little cold at first, but then it felt so refreshing. And when I saw the ocean, it was the first time in my life I had ever seen something so big. I felt small, and I felt amazed." Now that was a real story. I could feel the sun on my skin. I could feel the cold water on my feet. I could even feel his sense of wonder and amazement. The story was the same, but the emotion made it completely different. It became a memory that I could share with him, not just a list of things he did. So now, I want you to try this yourself. Let's call it the storytelling challenge. Here's what you do. Think of a simple story from your life. It could be about today. It could be about something funny that happened last week. It doesn't matter if it's big or small. Tell that story out loud, to a friend, to a language partner, or even to yourself in the mirror. This time, don't only give the facts. Add at least 3 emotional words to your story. For example, instead of just saying, I missed the bus, you can say, I missed the bus and I felt so frustrated and stressed because I was late. Instead of, I saw my friend, you can say, I saw my friend and I felt so happy and excited. When you do this, your story will instantly become more interesting. It will be easier for people to listen to you, and you will connect with them on a deeper level. This exercise will help you speak more fluently. It will also help you listen more effectively. Because when you start listening for emotional words in other people's speech, you don't only understand the facts. You also understand their feelings. This is the true power of being a smart speaker. It is not about being the fastest talker. It is about being the most human. But soon, Alex noticed something new. His stories had emotion. They had feeling. But his delivery still felt a little flat. He told me, Jara, sometimes I feel like a robot. I say the right words, but my voice doesn't sound natural. My words don't have the right music. And that was the next challenge we had to face together. Alex came to me one day and said, Jara, I can tell a story now, and I can even use emotional words. But when I listen to native speakers, their voices have a rhythm, a melody.
My voice just sounds flat.
I feel like I'm saying the right things, but I'm not saying them the right way. This is a very normal problem for learners at the B1 and B2 level. You have learned the grammar. You know the words. You can build sentences. But you haven't yet learned the music of English. And this is a very important part of speaking smart. The tool we need now is rhythm, stress, and intonation. These are the musical parts of the language. They give your speech life, feeling, and meaning. Rhythm and stress. English is what we call a stress-timed language. This means that not every word is equally important. Some words are more important. These are usually nouns, main verbs, adjectives, and adverbs. These words get more stress. You say them louder, longer, and with more energy. Other words like a, they, is, on, and are less important. We say them quickly and quietly. If you don't use this rhythm, your speech can sound flat, stiff, and robotic, even if your grammar is perfect. Think of it like music. Rhythm gives your words a beat. Without it, the words are just a random series of sounds.
For example,
I like the coffee. If you stress every word equally, I like the coffee, it sounds stiff. It is just a statement of fact. But if you stress the important words, I like the coffee, it starts to sound natural. It has life, like music. Intonation. Another part of the music of English is intonation, which is the rise and fall of your voice. Intonation shows emotion and intention. For a question, your voice usually rises at the end. Are you coming? Notice the rise on coming. For a statement, your voice usually falls at the end. I am coming. Notice the fall on coming. If you don't use the right intonation, your sentences can sound flat or even confusing. People might not know if you're asking a question or making a statement. Practicing rhythm. I remember working with Alex on this. We practiced a simple sentence. I like the coffee. At first, Alex said it with equal stress on every word. I like the coffee. It was correct, but it sounded robotic. I told him, Alex, listen. Let's feel the rhythm. Clap your hands on the important words. I like the coffee. We clapped together. I like the coffee. This simple exercise helped him feel the beat of the sentence. English has a natural musical rhythm, and the more you listen for it, the more you'll hear it in your own voice and in the voices of others. Stress changes meaning. Stress can even change the meaning of a sentence. I like the coffee. Stress on I means I, not someone else, like the coffee. I like the coffee. Stress on coffee means I like coffee, not tea or soda. The words are the same, but the meaning changes completely because of stress. This is why rhythm and stress are so powerful. Adding emotion with intonation. Intonation can also show emotion. I remember another time Alex told me about a movie he saw. I thought the movie was good. I asked, "Did you really think it was good?" He said, "Yes, I really liked it." Then I said, "Alex, your voice didn't show me that excitement. Let's try it again. Say it like you really liked it with a little more energy in your voice." We practiced changing the rise and fall of his voice and stressing the words that mattered. Suddenly, the same sentence sounded alive and real. It wasn't just words anymore. It was emotion. When you practice rhythm, stress, and intonation, your English sounds more natural. People can understand you more easily. You can express emotion and intention, not just facts. Your speech becomes interesting, musical, and human. This is the final step in speaking smart. Grammar, vocabulary, language, storytelling, and now the music of English. Put them all together and your English will sound alive and confident. Alex tried again. This time he said, "I thought the movie was good." This time, his voice rose naturally on the word good. Suddenly, the sentence had music. I could feel his excitement in his voice. The words were the same, but the meaning was completely different because of the intonation. This is a very smart way to learn and speak English. Using rhythm and intonation improves clarity. People understand you better. Sounds natural. Your English stops sounding stiff or robotic. Boosts confidence. You feel proud of your voice. Communicates emotion and intent. Your words carry meaning, not just information. Practice exercise. Clap and speak. For your own practice, try the clap and speak exercise. When you listen to a podcast, a TV show, or a conversation, listen for the stressed words, the important words that carry meaning. Clap your hands on these stressed words as you listen. This helps you feel the rhythm of English. When you speak to a friend, a language partner, or even yourself in the mirror, try clapping on the stressed words while you talk. You don't have to be perfect. Just practicing this will train your brain to use a natural rhythm, making your English sound fluid, confident, and human. At this point in the journey, your English stops sounding like a list of words and starts sounding like a real conversation. The final challenge. As Alex got better at all of these skills, a new question came up. "Jara," he said, "all of these things you've taught me, asking questions, not being afraid of mistakes, stealing phrases, using the language, and finding the rhythm, they're working. But I feel like I'm only practicing when I'm in a conversation. How can I keep improving every day, even when I'm alone? I want to get better, but I don't always have someone to talk to." This is a very common challenge for B1 and B2 learners. You have all the tools, but you need a way to practice consistently. The power of your own language lab. This is where the idea of a language lab comes in. A language lab isn't a big, expensive room with machines. It's a simple, safe place where you can practice English freely. It can be anywhere. Your bedroom, your kitchen, your car, a park bench. All you need is your phone to record yourself, listen to podcasts, or repeat phrases. A small notebook to track mistakes, phrases, and ideas. This method is smart because it turns every moment of your day into a learning opportunity. It makes practice a habit, not a chore. Even when you are alone, you can continue speaking, listening, and building your confidence every single day. Creating your own language lab is one of the smartest ways to practice English. A language lab is not a real laboratory with machines. It is simply a safe place where you can practice without feeling judged. You can make mistakes, try new phrases, and build your confidence in a supportive environment. I remember giving Alex a step-by-step plan for his language lab. I wanted him to have clear actions he could do every day. Step 1. Record yourself. I told Alex, your own voice is the most important tool you have. You need to get used to hearing yourself speak English. You need to be able to listen to your own voice without feeling embarrassed or afraid. I suggested he use the voice recorder on his phone. He could tell a simple story from his day, read a short paragraph from a book, repeat sentences he learned. At first, Alex didn't like the sound of his voice.
He said it sounded strange and foreign.
But he kept recording himself every day. Over time, he started to hear improvements. He began to notice the rhythm of his speech, the stressed words, the natural flow of English. Soon, he began to enjoy the sound of his own voice in English. Recording himself every day, even for just a few minutes, became a powerful way to build confidence and track progress. Step 2. Use a word bank. The next step was a notebook full of new words and phrases. I told Alex to always carry a small notebook. Whenever he heard a new phrase, he would write it down. Not just the word, but the whole phrase. For example, he hears, "I'm looking forward to the weekend." He writes it down exactly as he heard it. At the end of the day, he would take a few minutes to practice using these phrases in his own sentences. This is a very smart way to grow your active vocabulary, the words and phrases you can actually use in conversation. His notebook became a treasure chest of English phrases. By reviewing it each morning, he could see his progress and feel his English growing. Step 3. Talk to yourself. The final step is to talk to yourself in English. I know it sounds a little strange, but it is one of the most powerful exercises you can do. Alex could talk to himself in the car, while cooking, in the shower, about his day, plans, or a movie. The only rule: speak in English. Talking to yourself helps you train your brain to think in English, build sentences naturally, gain confidence in a safe space. Alex told me about a day he was driving to work. He was talking to himself about his to-do list. He made a few mistakes, but he didn't care. He was thinking and speaking in English without fear. He said to me, "Jara, I realized that I'm not just learning a language. I'm learning to be myself in a new language." That was a beautiful moment. By creating his own language lab, Alex had given himself the freedom to be himself, make mistakes, keep learning every day. Your turn. Language Lab Challenge. You can do this too. For the next week, dedicate 10 minutes a day to your own language lab. Here is a simple plan. Record yourself, 2 minutes. Tell a short story or read a paragraph. Review your word bank, 3 minutes. Write down new words or phrases. Try to use them in a sentence. Talk to yourself, 5 minutes. Speak about your day, plans, or anything you like. It doesn't have to be perfect. The goal is consistency, not perfection. Even small, daily practice will grow your confidence, improve your fluency, and help you think in English naturally. This is the most powerful and personal part of the Speak Smart, Learn Fast journey. It is about taking control of your own learning and giving yourself the time and space to practice without fear or pressure. A few months after starting his language lab, Alex had to attend another work conference. But this time he was ready. This was not the same Alex who had once stood in a corner, smiling and nodding, feeling invisible. This was a new Alex, someone with a toolbox full of skills and the mindset of a smart speaker. He told me about that day later, and I could feel the pride in his voice. He walked into a big, crowded room, but instead of panic, he felt a quiet confidence. It was like a boxer who had trained for months and was finally ready for the fight. Near the coffee station, he saw a small group of colleagues from different countries talking. In the past, he would have walked by and stayed invisible. But this time, he walked straight toward them. The conversation was already flowing. One of the colleagues, a woman from Ireland, was speaking very quickly. In the past, Alex would have felt overwhelmed and given up. But this time, he was a language thief and a smart listener. He didn't need to understand every single word. Instead, he focused on the rhythm and the main ideas. He heard phrases like, "on the other hand," signaling a contrasting idea. "To sum up," signaling a conclusion. Even without understanding every word, he understood the structure of the conversation. That was enough. When there was a natural pause, Alex used his first tool, asking a question. A simple, low-pressure way to show he was engaged in the conversation. He said to the Irish colleague, "That's a very interesting point. What are your thoughts on the next steps?" This was not just a question. It was a signal that he was now a participant, not just an observer. The colleague smiled and started talking about the next steps. Alex was fully in the conversation. Later, a colleague from Germany said something Alex didn't fully understand. In the past, he would have nodded and pretended to understand. But now he used his courage to embrace mistakes. Calmly and confidently, he said, "I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch that last part. Could you explain what you meant by synergy?" He was not afraid of silence and not afraid to show he didn't understand. A mistake was just a moment of learning. The German colleague smiled and explained the term in a simpler way. Alex had just turned a moment of potential embarrassment into a moment of connection. Later, the conversation shifted to a lighter topic, a new TV show everyone was talking about. Alex had seen it. In the past, he would have just listened and smiled. But this time, he decided to share a short story about the show. He didn't just list the facts. He shared a human experience, using a simple language to start his story. His story had emotion, details, and a clear beginning, middle, and end. People listened. They laughed. They responded. And Alex felt connected, confident, and proud. This day showed him something very important. All the tools he had learned, asking questions, embracing mistakes, stealing phrases, using the language, and finding rhythm, could work together in real conversations. They gave him freedom, confidence, and control. From my point of view, the main character in Alex's story was so funny. There was a scene where she had to give a presentation and she was so nervous and awkward. I felt bad for her, but at the same time, I could really relate to her feelings. Alex told this story to his colleagues using simple emotional words, and it made the story feel real and human. His colleagues laughed, and one of them said, "Yes, I know exactly what you mean." In that moment, his story created a powerful connection with the people around him. As the conversation was ending, Alex did something that made me truly proud. He used a new skill from his language lab, pronunciation, rhythm, and stress, to make his English sound more natural.
He said,
"I'm so glad I came to this conference. It's been really great to meet all of you." He didn't just say the words. He said them with the right rhythm, stress, and feeling. He was no longer a robot. He was a human being speaking with confidence and emotion. His words had a beat and a soul. This moment is the culmination of the Speak Smart, Learn Fast journey. Alex's success didn't happen because he suddenly became perfect. It happened because he stopped chasing perfection and started using his English strategically. He learned how to use the tools he had, step by step, every day. He went from being a passive listener, afraid to speak, to an active participant, confident, prepared, and brave. He learned that speaking smart isn't about being the best. It's about being strategic. It's about using the tools you have a little at a time to build confidence and connection. The most important lesson of all is this: your English is already good enough. Yes, you heard me correctly. Your English, with its beautiful accent, a few small grammar mistakes, and a growing vocabulary, is already enough. The real challenge is having the courage to use it. The real challenge is overcoming the fear that stops you from joining a conversation. We have learned many tools and strategies together. But the most important tool isn't in your notebook or on your phone. It is in your heart. It is your courage. Think of learning English like learning to ride a bicycle. You can read 100 books about riding a bike. You can watch 1,000 videos. But you will never learn to ride until you get on the bike. At first, you will wobble. You will fall. You will make mistakes. But each time you fall, you learn something new. You learn to balance, to pedal harder, and to steer. Slowly, little by little, you find your confidence. The same is true for speaking English. You can study all the grammar rules and memorize thousands of words, but you will never become confident until you open your mouth and start speaking. You will make mistakes. You will use the wrong word. You will pause awkwardly. You will mix up tenses. But every time you try, you learn something new. You learn to recover, to keep the conversation going, and to be part of it. This is the true path to confident English speaking. This is the final and most important message of our Speak Smart, Learn Fast journey. It is a lesson, a philosophy, and a way of thinking about learning English. Your English journey is not about being perfect. It is not about reaching a final destination where you never make mistakes. It is about enjoying the process of learning, step by step. It is about having the courage to make mistakes and the wisdom to learn from every single one. Your voice, with all of its mistakes and imperfections, is beautiful and powerful. Your voice has a story to tell. Your voice deserves to be heard. It doesn't matter if your accent is strong or if you sometimes use the wrong word. What matters is that you use your voice, that you speak, and that you share your thoughts. My friend Alex, who we have followed on this journey, is not a perfect speaker today. He still makes mistakes. He still has a strong accent. But he is confident. He is no longer afraid to open his mouth and participate in conversations. He is no longer afraid to make mistakes because he knows that every mistake is a chance to learn and grow. Alex found his courage. And when he found his courage, he found his voice. And you, my friend, can do the same. You already have everything you need inside of you. You have the tools. You have the strategies. And most importantly, you already have the courage. All you need to do is take the first step. Think of learning English like learning to ride a bicycle. You can read all the books about riding a bike. You can watch all the videos. But you will never truly learn until you get on the bike and start pedaling. At first, you might wobble. You might fall. You might feel scared. And that is okay. Every fall is part of the learning. Every fall teaches you something new. You learn how to balance better. You learn how to pedal more confidently. You learn how to steer. The same is true for English. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to know every word. You just have to be brave enough to speak. You just have to practice every day, even if it is only a little bit. Over time, step by step, your confidence will grow. Your voice will grow. You will become a fluent, confident, and expressive speaker. I hope this journey has given you hope, courage, and motivation. I hope it has shown you that learning English is not a race. It is not about a destination. It is a journey. And every step of the journey is valuable. Every mistake, every word you learn, every sentence you say, it all matters. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey. This has been the Super English Talks, and I'm Jara. Until next time, remember, keep listening, keep practicing, and most importantly, keep speaking with courage. You can do this. You've got this.